to Wine Wednesday. This week we switched up the location a little bit, and that's because I needed a room with a door where I could close out our two terrible fur babies who are getting in trouble. Juliet, though, is hanging out in the room with me, but I don't think she's going to want to be featured in this video. So we're in the corner of the bedroom right now. Please ignore these lovely planks of wood on the wall behind me that were screwed in by a past tenant, and we cannot get them off the wall now. So that's fun. You can tell in this video I'm going to be drinking some tea first thing in the morning. I don't need to crack out the wine, but I promise I will have a Merlot tonight with my dinner. And I did try and pick the most wine colored tea that I have in order to sort of compensate. So there you go. This is going to be the first video in a series that talks about specific varietals of wine. So we're looking at things like Chardonnays, Rieslings, Gewürztraminers, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and some lesser known ones as well. We're starting with Merlot today for two reasons. Two. First is because I have a cool shirt to go along with it. So let's just get a little view there. You had me at Merlot. Love my puns. And the second is because Merlot is Chelsea's favorite wine. So I thought I would start out this week with a choice sort of in honor of her. When you're talking about specific varietals of wine, you're going to get people who have really, really strong opinions about, well, everything to do with wine in general. And Merlot is a really strong example of that I'll get into in a minute. But just know that in general, when people have really, really strong opinions of wine, they're often not based in personal experience with the varietal. They're usually based in sort of unsaid preconceptions. So you'll sometimes hear things like, oh, I can't stand sweet wines. I only drink red wine. And this wine is pretty good, but it's no 75 Chateau Surterre. And all that's well and good, but I personally think that every wine varietal has something different to offer based on where it's grown and who's making it, and there can actually be a lot of variety within the varietals. I just thought of that right now. Merlot, though, got a bad rap for another reason other than people sort of being snobs. And that's because it was featured in the movie Sideways. Now, in Sideways, and I'm going to be honest with you, I've never seen it, but what I've learned from the internet is that Paul Giamatti's character is somewhat of a wine snob. He really likes Pinot Noirs. At some point in the movie, he says the now famous line, "I'm not drinking any fucking Merlot." I mean, that's all well and good, but it turns out that the reason he won't drink any Merlot is because it's his ex-wife's favorite kind of wine. So if I have one wine tip for you to take from this video, it's that don't make your wine choices based off advice from a bitter divorced man. So after that movie came out, you actually saw a lot of decrease in sales in Merlot, which is ridiculous, and it's got a bit of a bad rap, which is still unraveling today. Despite having that dip in popularity, Merlot is one of the most widely planted grapes in the world. It's number 2 after Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's the most planted grape in Bordeaux region. Merlots tend to be sort of a medium in the spectrum of red wine. On the lighter side, you'll have Pinot Noir, and on the bolder side, the heavier side, you'll have things like Shiraz and Cab Sauv. Merlot tends to fall in the medium, although they can get quite bold as well. So we're looking at things like medium tannins, medium acidity, medium. One of the most important things you can note about with each wine varietal is sort of where in the world they come from. So where does Merlot come from? With Merlot, you're going to be looking at a whole bunch of different regions, which makes sense because it's planted widely across the world. First, obviously, you got to talk about Bordeaux since it's the dominant grape in that region. It's also heavily planted in northern Italy, as well as places like South Australia and the United States, particularly in California and within Washington state, as well as Argentina and Chile. Now we're going to go ahead and add Canada onto that list, because even though most wine articles don't like to talk about Canada because we're pretty small numbers wise, we do have quite a bit of Merlot planted in both Niagara and in British Columbia. In fact, in British Columbia, I think Merlot makes up about, I think I read somewhere, a third of all of the red wine grapes planted in British Columbia. So it has quite a popular presence as well, and we have some fantastic Merlots that come out of our regions. When I find I don't get a lot of information about Canadian wines when I'm talking about these things in general, I'm always going to try and add it in because I'm a huge advocate for our wine regions here. I think we do amazing stuff. Why it's important to know where your Merlot might come from is because it affects the taste. You have warm climate regions mixed in there, and you have cool climate regions mixed in that list. And you're going to see a difference in the tasting notes between the warm climate and the cool climate. So if we're talking warm climate, we're talking about California, Argentina, Chile, for example. And we're going to see that those Merlots tend to be more fruit forward. So you're getting more of the sort of jammy fruit characteristics. You're getting things like plum, like cherry, like blueberry and blackberry, as well as getting some more floral characteristics in it. On the other hand, your cool climate region, which we're going to be looking at sort of the Bordeaux, the Northern Italy, the Canada regions, is going to be less fruit forward. You still have your red fruit, your red berries mixed in there, so you have things like raspberry and currants, but you tend to get more herbaceous notes coming across. And herbaceous is just a really, again, fancy way of saying you get herbal flavors in it. So if you're having a wine and you're picking up things like mint or thyme or tobacco leaf or anything like that in it, that's what we would call herbaceous qualities, and that's sort of present in the cool climate wines, as well as sometimes a little bit of like an espresso characteristic, which as a coffee addict I really enjoy. In general, the cool climate Merlots are going to be more structured. They're going to be more structured. They're going to be more earthy, and they're also going to be a little bit more food friendly, which brings us to what kind of food can you have with Merlots? And I'm talking about sort of normal everyday pairings, not your I'm going out for an extremely fancy meal pairings. So just generally, you can look at what meats does it pair well with. You can talk about steak and lamb, which is all well and good. You can also talk about roasted poultry. Also things like meatloaf and hamburgers go really, really well with Merlots. If you're looking at having a fancy cheese party, go with something like a smoked cheese or a really soft creamy cheese as well. Anything with sort of an earthy characteristic to the food, where you're having like garlic or mushroom notes in your meal, is going to pair well with Merlot. I also personally think Merlot pairs particularly well with sort of that emotional feeling you get watching an underdog really succeed in a competition. Enjoying a glass of Merlot while watching Elle Woods win her court case in Legally Blonde is the perfect pairing, in my humble opinion. I'm gonna leave you with the last couple of fun facts about Merlot that quite frankly just didn't fit anywhere else in this video. Fun fact number 1, Merlot actually is based off of a French word which means blackbird. This fact won't help you at all in anything other than sounding somewhat interesting at dinner parties where you're surrounded by a lot of wine snobs. It's also a pretty thin-skinned grape, which means that it's a good grape to go in cool climates because it ripens faster. And when we have sort of limited days of heat and sun, that's something that you want to look for. However, it also means that it's pretty temperamental, which we know here in Niagara because we actually lost a lot of our Merlot grapes a couple winters ago when we had a few days of extreme cold and then a few snowstorms blow through, which is quite unfortunate. So it can be a bit of a temperamental grape. And your last fun fact that I'll leave you with is another tip for if you want to kind of show off your wine knowledge. If you're looking to impress someone in a blind tasting and you're not sure if it's sort of a Cab Sauv or a Merlot that you're trying, a Merlot sort of has a telltale orange rim around the edge of the wine glass. So if you're looking down at your glass and you see around the outside of it that there's an orange tint to the edge of your wine, it's probably a Merlot. Thanks again for joining me for Wine Wednesdays. If there's anything in particular anyone wants to learn about, please put it in the comments and I'll try my best to answer your questions or make a video about it. I'm going to try and mix up videos about specific wine varietals as well as videos about other things to do with wine. And thanks for watching. I need to figure out an ending for these videos. I don't know how to make an outro.